Hello and welcome to another episode of the Starchild podcast. I'm Starchild, your host. Yesterday I had the pleasure of watching the Georgian film And Then We Danced, which is directed by Levan Akin. Let's see. It is his first feature-length film, and I absolutely loved every minute of it. Its runtime is 113 minutes long. And it had a very small budget of €250,000. The director, Levan Akin, actually found both actors, Levan Gelbakhiani, on Instagram, which is crazy. And he plays the Georgian dancer seen here, called Merab. The director also edited the film himself in his kitchen over the course of 3 months, which is insane to believe, because editing is just such a lengthy, tedious process. This film is a gay drama about the Georgian dancer Merab, who has been training for the National Georgian Ensemble with his dancing partner Mary, played by Ana Javakishvili. However, when a new dancer arrived named Irakli, played by Bachi Valishvili, once he arrives, he becomes Merab's biggest competition and also his strongest desire. Both main actors were very hesitant to approach these roles because of the current political climate in Georgia. So it's very courageous for them to do this, and their roles are very compelling. Georgia right now is an extremely homophobic country, one of the most homophobic countries in the world. So it took some convincing for them to do this film. It debuted in the U.S. on February 9th, and it's already having a major impact internationally as well as at home in Georgia. This is one of those movies that are transformative and I believe will have a lasting impact on its audience once they see it. And it was filmed in Georgia, which had many complications when it came to shooting. They had to sometimes even lie about the plot, about the film, and they couldn't get filming permits from many of the locations, and oftentimes had to change locations, their filming locations last minute. However, once it debuted in Georgia, it actually sold out essentially immediately on all screenings. But there were soon quickly violent riots and protests at those screenings. But nevertheless, it was still shown. But it just kind of goes to show the situation right now in Georgia for gay people. And as ignorant as homophobia is, I believe that this film is and will have an impact globally once you see it, and I advise anyone to watch it and help support it, because films like these really expose people to people unlike themselves and cultures unlike theirs, which is how we develop emotionally and gain emotional intelligence and form better world views, in my opinion. Now, director Levan Akin, in my opinion, took a very organic approach to filming this with his low budget. He didn't rely on lighting, because lighting would be a nightmare when it came to editing. So he just used the natural light of sets. Oftentimes the night sets were lit with the orange glow of the orange spotlights that you'll see on the Georgian streets. He also filmed very close when it came to the dance sequences to more accentuate the facial expressions of the dancers rather than their actual dance moves. Merab's character, played by Levan Gelbakhiani, they share the same first name, actually used to dance for many years as a child, and had to practice seven hours a day for 3 months leading up to the filming of this movie. And as a kid, it's very common for Georgian children to learn traditional Georgian dance. What this film also does is it takes a highly masculine monoculture such as Georgia, and it shows the more warm side of the Georgian culture and kind of brings a new light to their culture, which was the ultimate goal of the director. He also said that it's already so dark in the world at the moment, currently, that he wanted to show Georgians in a different perspective and shine a different light on their culture, which I thought was a great and smart thing to do on Akin's part. The film takes place in the Georgian town of Tbilisi and has caused a small movement there where people are talking about the film, talking what it's about more openly. There's even street art that's popping up around the town of Tbilisi, which I think is pretty cool. And this is also living proof that international cinema really can unite and change the world by exposing audiences to people and cultures unlike themselves. The choreography was really intense. Georgian dance is very fast and similar to hip hop or breakdancing in a way, more than it is ballet. And again, on a low budget, the director had to shoot mostly close-ups of the dancers, which really made the shots more intimate and intense, which I loved, when you're looking at the dancer's face as opposed to the dance moves. Because of the homophobia, many of the crew members actually opted to remain anonymous in the credits, which really tells us a lot about the terrible situation there in Georgia, that they don't even want to be credited in their own film. A lot of the traditional Georgian songs also had to be remade because they couldn't get the rights to them. The director, Levan Akin, says that the Georgian government is 50-50 when it comes to supporting gay rights. They have one leg in Russia and one leg in the EU and UN wanting their funding, but also Russia occupies a quarter of Georgian territory. So they're heavily influenced by Russia, which is also an extremely hyper masculine monoculture that has a lot to do with the influence of the neighboring countries to this day in Europe. And I don't really think Americans understand how dire the situation is in these countries for gay people and these cultures. They really have no rights or support from their families or governments. And I think LGBTQ people efforts in America need to take up the responsibility for fighting for gay rights internationally. I think that's where efforts should be focused on, shining a light on countries and situations like Georgia, like this, to show the rest of the world that people don't have the healthcare that they really should have, or the representation that they really should have, or the rights that they really should have. And movies like this really have a positive impact. They really expose us to people and places that make us learn about the world. And I believe it's an education in the end that cures racism, homophobia, sexism, and discrimination. Through cinema, we gain this cultural education. Most Georgians don't have this kind of exposure to different kinds of people, which is why it is a monoculture that oftentimes is closed-minded to their due to their traditionalism and conservatism. One of the positive outcomes of social media is that we can connect with people a lot more easily. Cast and crews are able to find each other much more easily. Films like this are easier to get made, which is why we're seeing this kind of cinema being made today, which is a really, really exciting thing in my opinion. And Levan Akin was able to find his cast and crew and bring them together through social media. And it gave everyone just a wonderful opportunity, and they gave off such great performances that were so compelling and, in the end, very courageous to do while filming in Georgia, with a war right next door, essentially. What also makes this film special is that the director didn't want to make the film too dark. Atkins says that there's already so much darkness in the world that he didn't want to make Merab's situation, his family situation, so horrible. Although his family is very poor, his phone gets shut off at times throughout the film. They lose their power and heat. But they still regain hope, and they do have some amount of empathy not seen in a lot of other characters in the movie. And the love story of Merab's character and Irakli's is really just a catalyst for him to discover who he is. And it's a beautiful thing to see him gain his confidence throughout the film. The director really believes that everyone has a universal desire to be creative and loving, which I also absolutely share, and really is at the core of my own philosophy. And it's a beautiful thing to see Merab's character feel so comfortable with his sexuality without really caring what other people think in his town or what his culture thinks about him. He's just, this is who I am, and this is what life is to me. And so I love those qualities about him. Unfortunately, his story isn't really the case for many LGBTQ people in many of the countries that I just named, who are sometimes considered illegal and have essentially no rights or protection from their governments or even families. So this is why I think international cinema like this is so important to the world, to show people different cultures and perspectives. And this kind of education is the antidote for the hatred and discrimination that we see in the world. And I believe that international cinema is one of the most valuable educations that a person can receive outside of traveling the world, which not many people get to experience. Insulated monocultures and communities, countries oftentimes have limited or zero life experience when it comes to other cultures or people unlike themselves, and this is why education is one of my own top priorities, because it fills the void of ignorance that comes with not really having a lot of life experience with other people and cultures, which is why I love movies like this, especially international movies, because they're three things: they're beautiful, they're entertaining, and they're also educational, all in one, all wrapped in one. Also, I love movies especially because they take all the arts and they make it a team effort. They bring us all together. They take the writers, they take the costumers, they take the makeup artists, they take the choreographers, the dancers, and the actors, and they bring them all together as one big family to make a project such as this. And it's really just a beautiful thing to see. So please, because of all these reasons, support local cinema, support international cinema, support your own personal creativity, support your friends' creativity. And I think through this, we can really change the world one movie at a time. And so thank you, Levan Akin, for making this film. And thank you so much for watching this podcast and supporting this podcast. Now let's watch the trailer together. And I hope you all watch this movie somehow on the internet, at your local cinema.
ინგლისური სიგარეტი.
ძალიან ნაზი ხარ. უფრო მონუმენტური უნდა იყო, გაიგე?
ბიჭო, არ არის ეს საქმე შენთვის, რატო ვერ გაიგე კაცო შენ, რა?
3, 4, ბავშვი.
ხარჯობა.
ვინ ახარ? იცი სად მოხვედი?
Great soundtrack too.
ქართულ ნაციონალურ ანსამბლში.
მე მოიხსენი ეგ საყურე.
არასწორად აკეთებ.
That's Irakli. That's Merab.
ნო ვეღარ იცოდება.
ეს ახალი ბიჭი ძალიან სტრანია რა.
ეს შენ და მარი ერთად ხარ თუ მეგოძარი?
ხო რა რაღაც ეგეთი.
მე ხედავ შენს თვალებს, რომლებსაც მე ვიჟუჟუნებ, წაგიღბარ შორგზასა, გამივლით ჟუჟუნად მინდა.
მე
მე შენმა ძმა მიცის პიდარასტი. შენ მოგითხრა, მოდი აქ
ქართული ცეკვა ვაჟკაცობაზეა დაფუძნებული. სისუსტის ადგილი არა.
Culture based on masculinity. Yikes. And then we danced. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Starchild, your host. Please visit my website, starchildgallery.com. Email me with any questions or comments. All my information will be posted in the description below. Also, visit my shop. That really helps support this channel. And I will see you guys again next week.